What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about Wyckoff redistribution and re-accumulation. But I'm just going to say it to you right ahead. I'm not going to be teaching like the actual pattern or how you see it, like using volume or seeing the pattern BC, ST, and B creates a spring. Then we create a creek, then a UTAD, then push lower, then is what we call a redistribution, because it starts off with looking like an accumulation and forms a creek. Then I think the volume, let's say this is the high of the volume does this. I don't know, I don't use this, I'll explain later, but form a creek, then we form a distribution. So hence redistribution starts with an accumulation and starts to create another distribution, then we call it a redistribution. And vice versa with a distribution. What happened? Oh, with a reaccumulation starts to look like a distribution buying climax, ST, UT, then the UTAD. Then we start to form a creek, creating liquidity from this high and low, this trend line, then creates a spring, then pushes higher again. Starts with a distribution, ends with an accumulation, hence reaccumulation. But I'm not going to be teaching that, because personally, as a trader that has traded maybe almost 1,000 times since I'm a scalper, since I believe in the fractal nature, every single day I might trade two trades every day, 5 trades a day, 8 trades a day, since I look at very low time frames, because I am a firm believer that the market, that there's a fractal nature of the market, meaning what happens in the higher time frames can happen in the very, very low time frames. So what I mean that I don't use redistribution or reaccumulation, or I don't think about them, because remember, my strategy, or the strategy I copied or learned, is 3-step strategy. And we have the confirmation, which is Wyckoff. So basically, we have our first structure, then we look for a POI, then we look for a confirmation using Wyckoff. So again, if you can see on the numbering here, structure is always first. Now keep that in mind, okay? So right now, what do we see price doing? Let's just go into 5-minute. What do we see price doing on Euro USD? We see price that is forming a bearish move, as we see lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, breaks this previous lower low, lower high. Then right now this is just equal low, so maybe creation of liquidity. Then we see structure, then we look for a POI. Then let's just say we use this order block over here. I did not take this trade. This is just for example's sake. Do your back testing so you could know it yourself. If you don't believe me, then don't believe me, you can click away. Then we have a POI here. Then we look for confirmation, or basically Wyckoff. Then I go on lower time frames. Now, this is what I mean. I don't look at reaccumulation or redistribution, or I don't think about that, because right now, what do we see structure doing? It's forming a bearish trend, basically creating lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower high, lower low, possibly lower high. We're expecting another lower low. So structure is forming a downtrend, or a push to the downside. So if you look for Wyckoff over here, or a schematic under here, we hits this POI. So obviously we want this to be a lower high, since the overall structure is forming a downtrend. So we want a distribution here, obviously, because we want to bring price to the downside. So obviously we would want to look for a distribution, then push to the downside, then enter. As soon as it breaks these lows, then it's a valid Wyckoff. Then we look for entries, be at these OBs, basically the test of that schematic. So let's check on the lower time frame. Let's go to the 15-second. Now if you look at this, Let's see oh, there it is. Okay, this is what I mean that I don't look at redistribution and reaccumulation, because look at this. This is obviously, since we've already seen the result, obviously you would say this is a distribution, because buying climax, UT, then a UTAD, and this could be just a sign of weakness. Then after that, we see the markdown. Then we could just enter on, which it didn't, price didn't go back up. Wait, I think it did from this point. Oh yeah, it did. So price tested these OBs over here. I didn't take this trade. This is just for example's sake. So we have that marked up OB. But basically, obviously we've seen that it marked down, so we would say this is a distribution. But if you look closer, what do we see? This looks like an accumulation, right? So we don't have a creek, but let's say right now, let's reverse this over here. What does this look like? Of course, it looks like a reaccumulation, because we see this looks like a spring. This could be a buying climax, no, selling climax, STNB. Then this could be the spring over here. Then we were expecting breaks of structure here, then enter on this or OB here, then continue to the markup. Now, that's the thing about the schematic or Wyckoff. You can see multiple schematics on multiple zones. Yeah, what I mean is see accumulation, see a distribution over here, distribution, accumulation, 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 reaccumulation over here, reaccumulation, distribution, reaccumulation, reaccumulation, distribution, accumulation. Basically, Wyckoff is everywhere. Now, if you confuse yourself with that, seeing Wyckoff everywhere, then you wouldn't be able to trade, since you don't, if you use Wyckoff as a sense of direction. But we don't do that. We don't use Wyckoff as a sense of direction. Basically, we just use Wyckoff as confirmation. What I mean by confirmation is, instead of buying blindly, or this still works out, I know some people do this, just have an OB, then bring it to the downside. We look for a Wyckoff schematic. For example, let's go over here. We'll look for a Wyckoff schematic, breaks these lows, then re-enter on the test on these OBs here. So we use Wyckoff as a confirmation, not as a sense of directions. Because if we look at this right now, even this graph, let's say, mark it up like this, what does it look like? It looks like a reaccumulation, because this looks like a spring. But you could be, that's why you have to be careful, because you could be blinded using Wyckoff. What I mean get blinded by using Wyckoff is you'll get confused that use Wyckoff as a sense of direction. Now, how do I combat this? How do I know that it's supposed to be a distribution, or I'm only looking for distribution? Is, remember, I said always remember on the first rule, which is disappeared, but it was structure. So what is structure doing? Right now, we're in a bearish move or a downtrend, since it broke this lower low, created a new lower low. So obviously, we're expecting structure to continue to the downside. So obviously, we would be looking for distributions, because what does distributions do? Distributions are schematics to push or to have a markdown. So we want a markdown since we're in a bearish move. Since, look at structure, creating lower lows, bearish move, we have a POI, then obviously we would look for distributions only, because we want price to continue to the downside to create another lower low. Since this is basically basic, most of you guys know this, but to create another lower low, since previously we've been doing a bearish move. So always look for a distribution. So vice versa, invert scale. So if we are in a bullish move up, higher high, higher high, higher low, Price broke that previous higher high, so this could be a new higher high. So we're expecting price to break this higher high again. So we will look for a POI or an order block here. Then we look for obviously an accumulation, since we want price to push up. Remember, structure is always king. Then what is structure saying here? We want to push to the upside. So obviously we would look for an accumulation. So that's how I use accumulation distribution, and that's the reason why I don't look at redistribution and reaccumulation, because I want things to be more simplified. But it's up to you guys on what aspects are you, or on what strategy are you are most comfortable with. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.